What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 97 of the Steam Deck Podcast, Split Screen Games weekly gaming podcast, all about Valve's portable PC powerhouse, the Steam Deck. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Max Wright.
Ahoy, ahoy, Pete. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I think we're both doing a lot better than Steve. So
Yeah, in a weird, bizarre twist, everything I know about Steve would suggest that he would never have a bird in his house. That in British, a bird is derogatory term for a woman. Just FYI.
okay.
And yet, here he is. Here he
I
is.
was so I was because my mind was immediately like, see, everything I know about Steve is that he's profoundly unlucky. So the idea
Yeah,
that
yeah,
a bird would find itself inside his home makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah,
yeah,
for those of you wondering where Steve is, he took a vacation this week and came home to find that he had a pigeon or a rock dove, as Chewy liked to point out
yeah,
in our chat, that had found its way down his chimney and spent seemingly the entire time he was on vacation just fucking up his house. So
yeah,
he is cleaning his home head to toe and
yeah.
getting rid of bird shit off of his computer and a bunch of other fun surfaces that you don't want a bird on. So
But on the plus side, he's got delicious pigeon salad every day for the rest of the week. So
yeah,
win, win, win. I say.
yeah, I don't know if it's a triple win, but maybe one there, I guess. But sure.
Spring clean as well.
Yeah, fair enough. It's an excuse for some spring cleaning. I'll take that. Look at you finding the positive, Max.
I always look for positives.
So, I don't, I thought I had a segue there. I was like, speaking of positives, but this is, I guess, really in the eye of the beholder, whether or not this could be a positive thing.
Yeah,
But you pitched a main topic for today, that your belief is that the future of gaming is in handheld.
I do. I've said this a few times in the past year where people have got they've got their own Steam decks or they've picked up like ROG Allies or other such systems. And I'm just like, yeah, like this is the way it should be forever. I think that this is the way that gaming should go. I've got my my entry statement, my sort of like
Your
thesis that I'll open with
hypothesis.
here. My hypothesis that I'll open with here,
I'm gonna tell you
which
what,
is
gang. Max wrote a 5 paragraph essay here. I mean, it's more, but he's got it broken down in these little set. Like, I used to be a teacher, so I'm ready to grade
he's
Max.
great. But yeah, get your red pen out,
Yeah.
circle all the things, A plus at the end, perfect.
Well, we'll
I didn't
see. But
know you used to be a teacher. What?
yeah, I was a college professor
Interesting.
for a while.
Interesting. All right, we'll delve into that another time. Here's my opening statement here. Right, after 7 years with the Switch and nearly 2 years with the Steam Deck, I believe wholeheartedly that the future of all gaming, both PC and console, lies in the versatility that handheld hybrid gaming provides. The Steam Deck and its official dock are not currently the ideal version of this future, but systems like the Switch with its automatic and effortless docked mode and the ROG Ally with its compatibility with eGPUs and also ability to sort of like pump extra power into it to get a bit of boost without that as well, offer a proof of concept that hints towards a future that I think could put the traditional console and PC market in the bin where it deserves to be.
Right in the bin, right in the
Right
trash,
in the
huh?
bin, get rid of it. Of
Wow.
course, just for some transparency, I have a PS5 in my living room. I'm currently sitting at a powerful gaming PC, and I use both of them. And I sort of, swap around where I'm gaming depending on the game and the situation, yada yada. But for me, the ideal gaming system of the future is a Steam Deck-like handheld device with a low-profile dock or eGPU that, through whether it's extra hardware or just extra power delivery, unlocks and dramatically improves the sort of performance and the experience when you're playing on a big TV or a monitor. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to list through sort of my pros here at the start. Pete's going to fight me at every corner, and I'm glad that it's you here, Pete, because Steve's a bit of a yes man for me when it comes to these sort of things. He'd agree with everything I'm saying. I need someone to fight me here.
I'm happy to
Um,
challenge any line of thinking.
yeah, good, good. We saw yesterday on Nintendo Noise that when I'm not challenged, like when Sierra didn't challenge any of my attacks, I just go off there. I just keep going. So I need to be stopped. I need to be held back, reined in. And then we'll go on over the cons, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me on all of that stuff. So it'll be a nice balance of us arguing and then us agreeing and shaking hands and coming to the
That sounds
conclusion
great.
that
Sounds
I'm
great to me, buddy.
correct. So let's start off with the pros, right? Uh, the obvious one is versatility. Now, you, Pete, I know you're like me. where like you play the big PS5 exclusives when they come out, or you like playing your big AAA games as well as your smaller indie titles. But I'm sure you probably have to make sacrifices, the same as me, where like you're playing, uh, you know, your big PS5 exclusive or your big AAA, powerful game, and you're playing them on a console because that's where you own it already. Like with me with the Elden Ring DLC, I already had Elden Ring on PS5. It's where your friends are. So I again was playing Elden Ring because I was playing with my friends online, or you might be playing a multiplayer game with your friends. Um, or you don't want to make the visual sacrifices that come from like docking your Steam Deck, where you have to suffer with like either you tank the performance or you have really grainy visuals to get that 60 FPS on your big 50-inch 4K TV, which isn't a great experience. Then you have issues with like I've unplugged it and now I have to change all my settings again. Things you don't want. Um, so you wouldn't be locked out from this with this system, because no matter what the game is, you wouldn't have to make sacrifices or be locked out from these sort of big games that you're desperate to play. Because if you're out on the train, like going to work, or you're on holiday, you're visiting family or friends or things like that. Times when you really want a handheld device, you don't want to be like, oh, I wish I was at home playing Elden Ring, or oh, I wish I was at home playing insert other game here that I can't think of now. In my future, your handheld games are your TV games, and your TV games are your handheld games, and it's just an all-encompassing gaming experience that does everything you want it to do. Pete, how you feeling about this?
So, I mean, in theory, I think this sounds great, right? I mean, what you're essentially describing is, I guess, an elevated version of the promise of the Nintendo Switch, right?
Exactly.
Which is, I think, I don't need to sell or sing the praises of the Nintendo Switch, right? It's obviously become a phenomenon for a reason, and I think the idea of hybrid consoles, right, that are able to kind of serve both of those unique needs is definitely attractive. I guess where that gets interesting, or I guess technically, maybe the word I'm looking for is where that gets like problematic, is like the kind of cost of it all, right?
Mhm.
And I think the most compelling argument that I can see, right, in that line of thinking is been this kind of ongoing conversation about the rising costs of AAA, and certain some of these games not having the level of profitability that publishers need them to. And I mean, I think there's a lot of conversations to be had there about why that is, right? And that in some cases that probably has to do with mismanagement, and having priorities that are out of whack, or having and that could be in a lot of different ways. That could be because you're paying, C-suite executives too much, and then therefore games need to have a higher level of profitability. Or it could be that you're overspending on, uh, features that we've talked about on this show that like the vast majority of gamers don't really care about, like ray tracing,
Mhm.
and that are nice talking points in your marketing and are cool for a trailer or to throw on a box. But, at the end of the day, is that really selling more units? The fact that there's ray tracing in this game? Or, do you look at what Nintendo has been doing with the Switch, and and this is a 7-year-old console that was old tech when they built it, and they just put out, for a lot of people, what was a game of the year contender last year in Tears of the Kingdom, right? And a game that was by all accounts a technical achievement, right? We've had a lot of folks write in on the Flip Screen Games podcast, our sister show, about how they don't feel like they're ready for a console upgrade, how they can't imagine how developers would be ready for such an upgrade, and that this generation has felt like it's moved a little bit slower in terms of kind of advancing and getting to that kind of quote unquote next gen level, right? And
Something that I entirely agree with, FYI.
sure. And it's something that I think is not an uncommon opinion.
Mhm.
And we've talked about how there is some of this technology that's on the horizon, like that can have things like frame generation. We just talked about that on this show, being able to take games like Spider-Man and bump it up to like 70 FPS on Steam Deck. So I think that there is an argument to be made that maybe we are hitting a plateau point in terms of people's desire for technological leaps every 5 years,
Mhm.
and that whether that's because we've hit a natural point in the progression of technology where those kind of leaps are just going to get less and less and less common, or because of market realities, that because of a global recession and all of these things that are impacting budgets on games, right? And how much they need to make and you know, on and on and on, that those things are going to necessitate games getting, you know, less quote unquote like advanced, right? Or constantly pushing graphical envelopes and the things that we know drive up technology costs when you're developing a game.
Mhm.
So I think with that in mind, the idea that, you know, rather than the next generation of consoles or what have you, right? Like being focused on making a newer, hotter box, like trying to develop something that is modular and that is more service oriented and is more about, you know, um keeping you part of the ecosystem. However, you need to be kept part of that ecosystem, and if that's continuing to buy games on your, you know, PlayStation 5 for example, or your Xbox, or that's using a handheld device that's a you know, a companion machine or a new SKU, or you know, playing your games in the cloud like with Xbox gaming, like I think you're probably onto something there with this idea that like we're gonna see a point, or that we may potentially see a point where just because of market desire that the overall cost of hardware goes down because there isn't that need to chase the next
Yeah.
graphical, you know, benchmark, because the games that are coming out now, you know, are ultimately not that different than the games that were coming out 5 years ago, right? And a lot of the games that are coming out now that are new, modern, current gen games, even 5 years into this life cycle, can play on last gen hardware, right?
Mhm.
There are obviously plenty of exceptions to that rule, but you know, it is a trend that we've seen that I think has had a longer tail than we're previously used to. Um,
Pete, you have touched perfectly on my second point here.
Go ahead.
So you mentioned about how people aren't ready for the PS5 Pro. People are, do the games need it? Do we need it? What if you can't afford to do that? What if, there's all kinds of barriers that sort of prevent you from wanting to upgrade or even needing to upgrade for developers or for the consumer, right? So in this modular world of mine that I'm, hypothesizing here, what if you could keep the same handheld you have, but you upgrade the dock, or vice versa? You already have the beefier dock, you upgrade the handheld. Here's my example, right? You just bought the PS Portal 2, which is the standalone PS handheld that has replaced the sort of handheld console under your TV. Sony's gone for a handheld and dock situation like the Switch, but it's more of the plug it in, you get the boost of a full PS5. You unplug it, you got your PS in your hands, right? Much the
It's
same way that
almost
we have,
like
right?
it's almost like the PlayStation TV that was a
Yeah,
companion that they had
exactly
for the
that.
Vita, right? Where it's like it didn't do any I guess it did technically upscale the games to some degree, but it
Mhm.
basically allowed you to play PlayStation Vita games on a
On
television.
the TV. Yeah, so it's
And
a an evolution of that concept. Yeah,
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 the
yeah.
idea that you could have something that like, hey, you know, this physical device I take with me when I'm out and about, and
Mhm.
all the games play at like 720 locked 30 frames per second. And when you
Yes.
go and plug it in, you achieve that 4K 60.
Yes. Okay, now imagine that world. Are you in that world? Are your eyes closed? Are
I'm
you in
there.
there?
I'm in that world. Sure.
Now imagine that Sony has just announced the PS Portal 2 Pro. And you're kicking yourself because you've just bought the PS Portal 2 because you saw it on offer. You've just bought into this new hard system, which happens. If you just bought a PS5 last year, they announced the Slim. Oh no. Now's the time you buy a PS Slim, PS4 Pro, PS5 Pros on the horizon. That's annoying. What if instead of needing to sort of upgrade the whole system, or this current system you have is now obsolete, what if you just buy the upgraded docking station that they sell, as a separate bundle, much the same way that you can plug the disk drive in for your PS5 Pro,
So,
and now you can take advantage of the new power of the new system, but keep the original system you have, so you can choose when you want to upgrade, you can choose what you upgrade, and that becomes more modular. Yes, you're adding more SKUs, it becomes a little bit more complex in that way, but it arms the player with choice and options and modularity.
so this is where I think I'm ready to rain on your parade a little bit.
Okay, go on.
At least now, because I think that's a very important caveat here. Is that I think when you get down to it, a lot of the conversation we're having right now is very much centered on how consumers engage with video games today in
Hmm.
2024 and how they have for, you know, the better part of the last 40 years or whatever, right? Longer, 50 years. Um and that is where I think it gets dicey. because what you're describing is a very, very complex, like, marketing, socioeconomic kind of concept, right? Which is that, and I'm gonna step on a lot of toes when I say some of these things. If you buy any of the products that I'm about to mention or maybe criticize, you might think I'm not judging you, I'm not judging those products. I'm just speaking about how these products are sold and uh technical specs that are objective, right? How you value those things is why there are different consumer products for different markets, right? But I'm getting into the weeds on this a little bit. And forgive me, I used to do this for a living.
Hmm.
Uh, but when you look at the PC market as it is, right? I think that it's probably safe to say in this company on this podcast, right? I think most of us would agree that if you want to get the best PC for your money, right? If you want the best one-to-one return on investment for power, for ability to run more software, play more games, like hit the highest benchmark, a PC is the best thing that you could buy. And the
Hmm.
best thing that you could do for yourself is to buy parts a la carte and build your PC, right?
Yes.
Okay, but a lot of people don't do that, right? The vast majority of people that play video games do not do that. Hell, a decent segment of the players in the PC space don't even do that, right?
Yes. Well, that's because that requires a level of technical ability. It requires a level of caring that a lot of gamers don't. I'm not saying that they don't care about games or
Right.
anything. I'm saying that they don't have the need or the want to do. That's why
Exactly.
consoles are
And
so
and
popular. You buy it, you plug it in, you do it.
exactly. And stick with me.
I'm sticking with you.
So now let's bring in this is the thing I was going to say that I think to some would maybe a less safe thing to say is that, like, let's bring up Apple, right?
Hmm.
Apple products have always been more expensive than buying a PC. They are pre-manufactured and they have very little control in terms of decision making on your part. You might get
Yes.
to choose how much memory's inside it, you might get to pick a color, but aside from that, their whole business model, and this is true of iPhone, iPad, any of the popular Mac products, right? They make it and then you buy it and they tell you
Hmm.
what you want. You don't tell them what you want. And yeah, like, that is more expensive. It's limiting. It has all kinds of things that it totally locks out. Like, you can't really use an Apple machine for PC gaming. You can't really use it with a lot of open source, like, freemium stuff that is made with Windows in mind. And it's the exact same thing on Android, right? Like,
Hmm.
Android is open and it's cheaper and all these other things that you can say are advantages. But if you're somebody that likes the simplicity of just buying an Apple product and it, quote unquote, just works, then you don't care. Right. And,
Yep.
and that might be a privileged position that you have that money to spend on a more expensive product or to pay someone to know so you don't have to. But that's consumerism, baby. Right. Like,
Yep. And
at the
I'm
end of the
right there with
day,
you.
I think that that is always why consoles have maintained popularity, is that
Hmm.
PC is an investment not only of money, but also of time and needing to, like, learn a bunch of things that you don't maybe want to know. It's like the same kind of person who, right? Like, you and I, or Steve, right? Like, I did a lot of research before I bought my smart TV because I wanted the
Hmm.
right refresh rate and I cared about the quality of the blacks that I was going to get and
Hmm.
all this bullshit that for the vast majority of people, they're like, how big is it? It's 4K? Great.
Yep.
And that's huge segments of a market that everyone is involved in. And I think to your point, I think that there is a version of this that is, more simple and that is maybe akin to what you have with, like, the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X, where I think that to maybe the outsider, it's maybe a little alienating or confusing, but it could be explained by, like, a Best Buy employee or a Target employee in two sentences. And you're like, okay, I understand. That's about as far as I think you can go, though. Because even with that variance between those two models, we've had multiple news stories on the Flip Screen Games podcast about, like, Baldur's Gate 3 couldn't come out on Xbox because it didn't run on this lower performant model, right? That was the affordable budget option that was supposed to have perfect parity, but ultimately doesn't because it's a
Mhm.
different SKU. And I think that that's where this gets dicey is that you are potentially overcomplicating the biggest value proposition of the console, which is that
Mhm.
if I want to play a video game, I go, I buy it, I plug it in, and it just works.
So, I agree with everything you've said there because, I actually was gonna bring up an Apple comparison of with a console, you have no choice, you buy it, maybe it's got more memory inside it or sorry, storage inside it, things like that.
Maybe you have
But
the
you
option to
are
get a pro unit down the line that's a little
yes,
bit more powerful,
exactly, yeah.
sure, right?
But
But
you are told, "This is what you want, this is what we're providing you," and you as the player buys it, right? There's no, what about you?" You like, "Right, I'm buying this, that's that." They tell you what you like, right? And with Apple, they took away, USBs and gave you one USB-C port, and they said, "You want dongles." Everyone went and bought dongles. They said to you, "You don't need, a aux cable anymore." People then they adapted. They bought AirPods. They provided the product that solved the problem, right? They took away the thing and they provided the product. And while that I think the AirPods are a fantastic product and they've done a lot for the whole, wireless earbud market, they are incredible now. Um, that was a leap that they took probably from a greed perspective, but it was something that they did and they said they communicated to their audience or their
ace,
market,
whatever.
we're doing this. This is how it's going to work, right?
Yeah.
I think that the PC when you think about building a PC, there's so many different factors and so many different things that when you think about the Steam Deck, you buy the Steam Deck, right? Or you think about the RG Ally, you buy the RG Ally. They might be overcomplicated with the Z1 Extreme stuff, but a lot of that got shrunk down. It's now just the X, right? If Sony says to you, you buy the PlayStation and you can get add-ons for it, you can get the Portal, you can get the PSVR. They say, here's our new PlayStation. You know the Switch, it's just like the Switch. You have your handheld thing, it plugs into the console, your games are on the TV, right? When they the same with the PS5 Slim, where they're like, here's the PS5 Slim, but if you want discs, here's a little thing you plug into it. People have got on board with that. They're okay with that.
Yeah.
Because Sony told them to do it, right? Because Sony has explained it to them, they've marketed it in that way. If they make this system, their system is just it is there's like the Switch, the piece, and it comes with the dock. But then 5 years down the line, they go, here's a new dock, throw your old dock away, put your old dock upstairs, so you can play these games across it, but you get to take advantage of the extra power with this new dock.
Yeah.
Sure, it might get a little bit complicated because then you have to wonder if right, is this going to work on this new dock? But the way that the PS5 Pro sounds like it's going to work in the current way is that the games get upscaled and they go through the is it PSSR something like that? It's a
Yeah. I
similar
I,
sort of
I
thing with
can
this,
never
right?
remember because there's DS
DLSS and then there's
DLSSR,
FSR and I think this is yeah, so DLSS, FSR and then PSSR.
right? And I
I always remember
always
it like the Beatles song, "Born in the PSSR." That's how I remember
That's
that.
good. That's good. That's helpful. I like
Yeah,
that because
cool.
I
Yeah.
my brain always goes to like DSLR camera,
Oh, yeah,
So
that's another one, yeah.
and it's like technically it's none of that is right. It's like it's
Mhm.
I'm combining. It's a whole mess in my brain. Go ahead.
Again, this is something they're gonna have to learn to market as well, right? They're gonna have to learn to market this, but they also, are not preying, but they're sort of expecting a level of ignorance. Again, I don't mean ignorance in a negative way. I mean, like, they're not expecting their audience, their console audience, to
It-
have a clue what DLSS is, right? They're
right?
just
Yeah.
saying, "This is
It's
PSSR, this is our thing, it's gonna do this thing." Like the same way they got on board with teraflops, they got on board with checkerboard
right.
upscaling, all of these buzzwords and things that they say, and now, I still get fed up when people use next gen. Like now we're saying, "Oh, these graphics next gen." The fact they're on a next gen console means they are next gen, technically,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
because
just
it's a marketing term
you
that they
envisioned it
use,
as being something different,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's a marketing term that they have used to say, "Oh, these are next gen." So people go, "Oh, this is next gen, great." And even now, 4 years in, people are like, "Oh, is this next gen?" Like, yes, it's not even next gen, it's current gen, technically.
We're deep in it now, right?
Yeah,
Like
we're
we're
we're current gen, right? So I think that if it's just two products, right? It's a dock and it's a handheld. Maybe there's a Bluetooth controller that goes with it too, so you have that complete experience, right? You're just swapping out one component of that. Or if you're not swapping out one component, you're upgrading the whole thing. You just buy the box that's got it all in, right? Um,
Yeah, I think
Sony does do complicated shit, right? We know that PSVR. Oh, in order for your PSVR to work on your PS5, you need to have this special PS5 adapter. Oh, for your PSVR 2 to work on your TV, you have to get this special. Sorry, PC, you have to get this special adapter. Oh, for your, there's a lot of caveats. There's a lot of like complicated things in console gaming in its current form, and I'm not suggesting that this is a system that you have to build, or I've made a point here about like the modular nature of PC gaming. So, like, let's say you've got an eGPU dock and your Steam Deck's plugged into it. Your 3060 you've got in there that you've had for, I don't know, 6 years is starting to show its age. It's not got the latest technology. If you just go out and buy the 5070 Super, the 5090, whatever's out at the time, and you plug that into your eGPU, as a PC gamer, you're probably more likely to know that. Sony doesn't need to say, buy a part, open it up, put it in, which again, they have done with SSDs. All they need to say
yeah.
is, this is a dock. It is a one-piece system. You unplug your old one, you plug your new one in. You have the upgraded console, but you still have the same feature from before. And all you need to do is either sell or replace or move one component somewhere else. If anything, what it gives you is two places to play your games now, and they can advertise it like that, right? They can say, "Oh,
Yeah.
look, give this one, put this one in your kids' room, or put this one in your office space." So, same with the Portal. Their marketing of that is, don't need your TV. Sit in the sit on the sofa while someone else is watching TV. You can just go and sit in your office because you've got it plugged in there, right?
Yeah, I think the issue I see with that is one that could be solved by this like upscaling technology that we've been
Mhm.
talking about, right? And like I think that's a big linchpin on whether or not something like this makes sense, because I think what becomes problematic is in the example you just described, it's that is 3 SKUs. And not even like from a marketing perspective or like explaining it to the consumer, but that's 3 versions of every given piece of software that then needs to run, right? It's the Xbox S to X series problem
Mhm.
exacerbated, because that would mean that the game needs to have a like bare minimum version, right? That runs in handheld, right?
Mhm.
And that needs to be kind of like the the lowest common denominator that every game needs to shoot for. And then you also need to have the ability to have it run at a, you know, like not performance mode. What's the opposite of that? What do they call it?
Fidelity mode.
Fidelity. I don't know because I only use performance mode.
Yeah,
You
same.
need to have that more fidelity mode, right? That's for the dock. And then every upgrade needs to have baked in on a technological level the way to upscale and
Pete,
and again,
that that all
that's
exists. That all exists right now.
it does, but it's not a perfect system, right? Like looking at the examples of again, the most recent one that comes to mind is Baldur's Gate was the
Mhm.
biggest game of the year at the time, and Xbox couldn't put it on their platform because they could not get it to run across every version. And as much as we like to, and the royal we like to like talk about how people have been trained to have upgrades with numbers and everything with cell phones, right? But yeah, but like you don't look at your apps the same way you look at as like the $70 boxed video game that you bought, right? And your expectation when you buy a PlayStation 6, right, is that whatever version I buy, whether it's the first one or the freshest one 5 years in, that every game that has that on the box will just play. And this is, I think yet another like evolution of a problem that we're already seeing, right? Where
Mhm.
one of the big marketing talking points on these current gen consoles was that it was going to be, oh, we're never going to have to deal with 30 FPS again. Well, that obviously didn't hold
Yeah.
true either. So again, it's like you hit this problem of like how much of what we're marketing about the first device is true about the third device in or the third modulation of the device, right? Let alone when we introduce, these other variables, right? Like if there is a situation where, you know, there is like multiple, like iterations of the handheld thing. Like you said, there's the uh Portal and then or Portal 2, and then they make a Portal 2 Pro, and then it's like, okay, so you know, then you have the handheld, the upgraded version of the handheld, the dock, the upgraded version of the dock. It becomes this thing that for the uninitiated is complicated. And not
Mhm.
so complicated that you couldn't figure it out, but I think it becomes very similar to the shit that we criticize them for their Game Pass competitor, right? Where it's like, what do you mean there's 3 tiers and one of them's like $60 and one of them's like $100 or whatever, and that one is supposed to have retro games, but then it also has like ports of retro games that were on PS4. I thought I was paying for the PS4 tier. Why don't I get this game, you know? And it's just it's an unforced error is what I like to call it, right? It's a baseball term. And
So what you're saying is that all of these problems that already exist would still exist. You would just have more choice about where you play your games, and you'd have all the benefits of a hybrid with the same problems we currently have right now with the normal box under the TV situation, right? I'm not claiming to fix all these problems. I'm saying we can have better everything else. Some of these problems can't change. Some of these problems are just problems with marketing and problems with the way that subscription systems work, or they're problems with like how gamers expect performance, they expect fidelity. What do gamers want? What you're doing is giving them more choice in a way that you can have more versatility.
yeah, I think you're right, but I think the argument I would make there is that I don't necessarily think that giving consumers more choice is always a good thing. I think it's good to give an informed, empowered consumer more choice because you know what you want because you took the time to do research and to answer a question of this is what I want. But
Mhm.
for a lot of people, right? Like a not insignificant number of people in every given market, they are not that person. They are not the activated person that reads articles on IGN or follows a gaming podcast or is on gaming TikTok or whatever, right? They're somebody that owns a shitty TV and the cheapest version of the console and with the, few hours a month or a year that they have to play a video game, they want to sit down and play a fucking video game. They don't want to do research about what the most best ideal way to play a video game is. And I think that, I see your point that console gaming is not as simple as it used to be, but I don't think that the answer to making it more accessible is to make it yet more complicated. Unless the, I guess prognostication about cloud being the future of gaming, if that's true. If we get to a point where cloud is seamless and it works and is just as, dominant as it is in streaming music or streaming movies or whatever else, right? Then fair play, right? Because I think at that point, what you're describing makes more sense to me because then you're envisioning a future where the average person who is that like lowest common denominator is completely fine having an Xbox app or a PlayStation app or whatever on their television and that's how they play on their TV and that's all they care about. And anywhere you have the controller and you can log in, you can play your library, right? And I think at that point then yeah, hardware will become an increasingly niche thing and it'll be a thing that only the hardcore people care about in the same way that you and I research our televisions before we buy
Yeah.
them. And that
My
that
issue
may
with the
be
world of cloud is the amount of caveats. We've already seen with the PS Portal where you take the device with you, but you need to be tethered to your PlayStation.
on
You
the same
need
Wi-Fi.
on the same well, you can do it on external Wi-Fi, but
They did yeah.
they've only
Yeah,
recently added the ability to access like hotel Wi-Fi or anything you need to log in at, right? If you suddenly lose the internet connection, your game stops. If you're trying to take it on a plane or a train, or you're on the underground or you're in a car, it's spotty. It doesn't work as well, right? Um, Whereas I still think that even there's so many external things for cloud gaming to work properly, whereas this takes the power away from the other things, the Wi-Fi. You could live in an area where the Wi-Fi doesn't work because the two parts that you need to play these games in these two versions, whether it's a more pared down version in the handheld or a more powerful version when it's on the TV docks like this, like we already do with the Switch technically, is all entirely in one system in the palm of your hands, and that's where I think this has benefits over cloud for the consumer,
It does.
uh, for
That's
every
the thing is,
consumer, right?
I think that what you're describing would be a good system. I think it's the like question of is that something that the average consumer can wrap their head around and does it have
Mhm.
added costs and things that make it alienating to them and I think that the answer when it comes to streaming is that like for streaming of everything that we currently stream the quality is not very good but
No,
most people
really not.
don't notice or care right like if you're a real movie person, right? Like I have friends that are like big film people, right? We don't stream movies when we go to watch their house. They have it on Blu-ray because they
Yeah,
want the
4K Blu-ray.
actual 4K quality. Whereas, like, I pay for 4K video on Netflix. I sure as don't get as hell don't get 4K video most of the time because other people are using the internet and throttling the service. And
Mhm.
it looks fine, but it's not clear, crisp, true 4K. In a lot of
Yep.
cases, it's being upscaled. It's like that isn't actually what you're paying for, right?
Yeah.
Like what you're paying for is convenience. And I think that, there's an argument to be made that people do want that with video games, but I think it's just not that simple because video games do not translate over cloud or Wi-Fi that or you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like through the internet the same way. A, because they're a lot bigger, but also if you're playing a game online, like lag and any
Yeah.
amount of
Even just controller, even just like input, delay and
delay,
things like
any
that
of
can cause
that
problems. Yeah,
makes
yeah,
it
yeah.
totally
Which is
unplayable.
why I'm not suggesting cloud and have never wanted to suggest cloud and will not be suggesting cloud for the rest of this conversation.
I
I
just think
think
it's
we
I think it's
should.
important to bring up because I think that
I
is
agree. I
I
agree.
think there's a reason they wanna steer us in that direction is that
Mhm.
I think it is something that would be appealing to the average consumer in a way that maybe more consumer choice is not.
Mhm.
It's a worse experience, but you don't care.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Whereas I think gamers probably do care when it comes to actually affecting the way they play and affecting the games they play.
Especially when
I
you think
I
about the fact that most of the most popular games for casual players are online games.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Fortnite's not gonna work, properly over a streaming
FIFA,
system.
right? Like
Yeah,
any of
yeah,
those games that people spend hundreds of dollars on
yeah,
a year, none of them are gonna work particularly well.
yeah.
At least not
Absolutely
now.
not. No, no. I mean, that is that is, huge, uh, infrastructure change there, as opposed to people being able to make things, in a better way, right? And by that I mean the developers of consoles. I think I've been
Next.
making.
Before you
Yeah,
make your next point, because I feel you're driving
sure.
to your next point, I want to remind people that this episode of the Steam Deck podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of July. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go check out our sister shows, Nintendo Noise or the Flip Screen Games podcast, if you want to write into the show for our Steam Docket segment, or if you want to suggest a main topic for a future episode of the show, you can do all that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find all the ways you can get involved in the community or show your support for the show. However you choose to do so, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Steam Deck podcast. All right, take it away, Maxi.
Pete, the audience are currently screaming at their podcast devices, their YouTube screens. They're screaming, going, "He's making too many good points. He's making too compelling an argument. When's he going to bring the balance?" And I think I'm going to bring the balance now. And I think we're going to be able to blitz through this a lot quicker because we're going to be in agreement for a lot of this stuff, Pete.
Okay.
So here are the cons, right? Here are the cons of my future. Um, the bees are all dead. No, the cons of my future. Number one, cost. Because where the Switch is, as an example, the Switch is an all-in-one device that offers both modes, right? You put it in, it plays on the TV, and there's no additional cost for that because it comes with the dock and the controllers. It comes with it all. But because of that, there are big sacrifices that need to be made in terms of performance. Modern games we've seen with Mortal Kombat 1 or other examples again. Modern games either look awful, run terribly, or they'll just skip the Switch entirely because the dock provides no extra power. The system itself is tiny. There's no way these games are going to run. The simplicity and the low cost, again, come at the sacrifice of that power. The ROG Ally, as another example in the PC sector, it requires you to sort of buy the system by itself, £500. And currently, the original ROG Ally, you have to buy, if you want to buy the proprietary eGPU with the proprietary connector that plugs in and gives you the boost that I'm talking about, that's an extra £1,500.
A
And that's
lot.
on sale. So it's more than that to be able to replace your PC in full, right? My boss goes to LAN tournaments every year and they always lug their huge $2,000 PCs, their screens, their expensive mice and keyboards. All it's going to take is one crash, and all of that's broken. So he said, "Oh, I've got my RG Ally. Maybe I'll take that with me. Maybe I'll look into this." And the cost of it was just too much. Now, the new ROG Ally X is going to give you more options, so you can connect any Thunderbolt 3 or 4, one of the two, housing to it that houses an eGPU. But that's going to cost you some money before you even factor the cost of a GPU in it. And this is where PC gaming sort of comes into this to sort of prove the cost of this. If I wanted to buy the RTX 4070 Super, which is like my ideal graphics card for my setup, it's the best option in my opinion for like a mid to high range. It has all of like the frame generation, the ray tracing. It has like the performance that outperforms modern consoles right now. That by itself as a unit, before you factor in the rest of the PC, is £600 on the low end. That's when you're getting just basic features. You're getting basic cooling. They can go up to like £800-900 if you're getting like the top tier ones with like all of the cooling or maybe even liquid cooling. Right? That's like what I would consider to be like the perfect point for like this is your main system. If you want to go above and beyond that, you want to get the 4090, the current flagship GPU that will be probably superseded by the 5090, or maybe they'll even do a 4090 Ti, yada yada, that offers you 4K visuals, it offers you sort of 160 FPS, whatever you need it to do. That's £2,000 by itself before you've even bought the eGPU and you've bought the system itself. You know that's going to play off of it. So in this current system, in this current sort of, if you wanted to have what I want now, you're looking at a minimum of 1200 to 2700, and then you have to deal with Windows. You don't have the Steam Deck simplicity. You have to deal with Windows. You have to deal with sort of, there are problems you have to go with there, right? And if you want to take that to another place, you have to take this expensive kit and put it somewhere else, or buy two of them, right? And that's one setup. So,
Now, let's imagine a console alternative to that, right?
mhm,
Maybe they find a way to streamline things a bit. Maybe we like the Switch, we start with, hardware that is already a little dated at launch, right? Something like that. I think even in the most aggressive pricing model, right? Like let's say that this new hardware comes out a few years from now, regular time in the console cycle, and it is essentially no more powerful than the current generation hardware, right? And maybe it's a little bit less expensive than, like, let's say the price point is $300 like the Switch, just for the
yeah,
sake of argument. Even in the most conservative price model that you've lined out here, for us to have that external GPU that allows you to play your now by default handheld console, right? As a traditional gaming console, the way that people have wanted to play for decades, that you're paying a tax for that. And
mhm,
it's going to be a lot more expensive than you're used to. You're talking about $300 for that, the base unit. Let's say that the dock is even $500. That means that
mhm,
your console is $800 out the jump for what you
yeah,
used to get for free. And I think if you're somebody that wants to play handheld like we do, right? We're handheld enthusiasts. That's great. I think I would absolutely have spent $200 more dollars or $300 more dollars on my PlayStation 5 or my Xbox if it meant that I got a, ability to pull the guts out with a screen on it and use it like a handheld. Absolutely, I would. Would everybody? Definitely not, right? And I
no,
think all you have to do is go look at any of the episodes on the Nintendo sister show we have, Nintendo Noise, where we had Chris Brandrick from Switch Weekly on, and you'll see that it is a damn near 50-50 split on people that use their Switch only docked or only in handheld, and that the hybrid usage that we're talking about is not the predominant use case. It's not an insignificant number of people, right? It's certainly an advantage of the unit. But to say that that's how everybody uses it, I mean, among this very, very, hardcore activated segment of the audience that's being polled for that survey, that shows that that's not true. And I
yeah,
think, we get nasty comments on this show all the time whenever we do an episode about should you buy a Steam Deck? We get PC gamers who are like, no, because the specs are shit. So why would anyone play a game on this thing?
yeah,
And that's the thing, is that threshold is different for everybody. The attitudes for, like, whether you want handheld, whether you want to play on a small screen, whether you want to play on a PC monitor or a giant 4K TV or whatever, right? Like, we all have those different kind of preferences. And you talked about that earlier, where like there are certain AAA games that, if it's the first time I'm playing it, I do want to play it on a bigger screen because I want to take in the work that was done on backgrounds more. higher quality, higher fidelity for character models, and I want to get the most out of the work that was done on the game, right? And I'm still somebody who's not playing it in the most optimized ideal version because I'd be playing it on PC, right? So
Yes,
it,
yeah.
it I think that is the biggest problem with this as a solution is that yes, it giving people more choice is often a good thing. But when it comes at a cost of both time and additional money, I think that's where it suffers as a mass market consumer product.
Yeah, because you're forcing the extra cost of the stuff that people do want, sorry, on the people that don't. And a
Exactly.
friend of mine, there's a couple of friends of mine who have never bought a Switch, and they have no interest in the Switch because what they want is Nintendo to just release a home console. They don't care about playing games handheld, but they also don't want to eat the cost of the screen and the Joy-Con and things like that, and also the cost of another controller that turns it into a more, standard system for them. That's too much of an additional cost for them, and therefore they're not going to buy the system because they don't want to have to sort of pay for the extra things. I remember when the Switch first came out and when games were coming out that were on PS4 or Xbox One or on PC coming out on Switch, and they were costing full price on the Switch because it was like technically it was a new release for Nintendo, a new release on the Switch. Didn't benefit from the price reduction that it had on other systems. And when people complained about that, the big massive response from early adopters was, "Well, yeah, but this one's handheld, so that's why it costs more. This is handheld." And I don't think the cost of the handheldness of it should have been in the cost of buying the Switch. You shouldn't then have to pay that premium, pay that tax every time you buy a game just because that game now happens to be handheld on a piece of hardware that you own that is handheld by default. And I think that you people shouldn't have to eat that extra cost because they might not use it in a certain way. Um, it should be a fair use. You should have options, but then you end up with a situation where you've got 3 SKUs, 4 SKUs. You've got the system by itself, the system plus the dock, and then just the PS TV style. Like it's just the innards in a
Yeah.
box, and that's
And
that's when things get too confusing and too expensive for
yeah, and I think
manufacturing as well.
I think ultimately it would have to be something like the Switch where you're committing to like this is what we do and this is
Yeah,
it now. And I
yeah.
think that, like you said, for some people that's just not what they want.
Mhm.
And, I think that's where the power of consumer choice can sometimes be an illusion, right? Because if you give people so much choice that they feel overwhelmed and they don't know what they want, then, it becomes a problem for sure.
Absolutely. Um, so let's go on to my next con, which in technically does sort of factor into cost in some way, um, but it's battery life and longevity of the system, right? So
Yeah.
devices with the kind of power that we want to be able to play these games sort of in a great handheld format as well as great on the TV. They need a lot of juice to run. They need a lot of power. You sort of the ceiling for demanding games, AAA games at the moment is about 2 hours, sometimes even less than that if it's really demanding, or you really have to sacrifice like visual fidelity or frame rate to get more than that. And I don't see battery technology keeping up with new hardware technology or like the demand for it. We've seen a 50% increase on the OLED, great, but um, that doesn't mean that by the time you get to the PS5 Pro sort of style era of games, or maybe next generation, that batteries are going to be able to keep up, especially when you don't want to have a form factor that's much bigger than the current Steam Deck. The reality of like the current handhelds, ROG Ally, Steam Deck, even the Switch in many ways, is that you are often just tethered to a power outlet of an airport departure lounge, or you're at a friend's house. I myself have been at friends' houses and we're all playing the same game, and I'm like, oh, my turn on the power cord, or my turn on the dock, because we're running out of juice and we need to keep swapping, and then it becomes a whole thing, right? Um, and also the way the current PC handheld market is, as we currently know it, is that sort of by the time that your device of choice, other than Steam Deck, I'm going to say, is about a year old, the manufacturer, Asus, whoever, has already announced its sort of like beefier successor. It's the ROG Ally X. Or if you're an Ioneo user, you're 6 generations old at that point. You've had Ioneo Air, Ioneo Air S. The one that you've had has been abandoned, and it's almost planned obsolescence in a way that consoles don't have, because consoles are made by the manufacturer. They have they have their own control of the market. They get 30% of every game sold. It's the same way Steam does it. They release one thing, it costs a price that it costs, and then they support that because they still get the money from that after the fact. And
And
the PC handheld market doesn't get that.
I think that's why that I think that's why the Steam Deck is the most popular.
Yeah.
right? Is
It's
that
the it's generally just the cost. Yeah, it's a simple buy.
well,
You know, Steam is the Steam
and it's
machine, right?
I think it's that as much as anything, right? Cost is obviously a factor, but I think it's brand trust, and I think that
Mhm,
that's a thing that you know, um, you don't maybe think about as much, right? Where it's like I think part of this is the Apple thing, right? Like what you're paying for is peace of mind that you know that you'll buy this and it will work and it'll be good enough and you don't need to think about it too much. And you know, yeah, like maybe the ROG Ally is technically more powerful or gives you more
mhm.
options in this way or that way or whatever, but it's like, but who wants that when you could have a Steam Deck?
Yeah, yeah, and, yeah, now they've already announced the ROG Ally X, so your ROG Ally is, 1, outdated, and 2, potentially has a flaw in its hardware that's killing SD cards or SD card readers, you're stuck with that. Um, or you're gonna have to upgrade and then maybe, a year later, you're gonna have to upgrade again, and, you know, you don't wanna buy a device that you have to upgrade every year like a phone, because a phone's already an expensive, thing to buy every year. And if you wait every 2 years, you're always gonna feel just out of the loop with your which is not what you do with gaming. You wanna just have the thing and you want it to work. Um, and it's the same way that, like, when at the start of this generation, the PS5 and its games were massively outperforming what was on PC. When you think of like Demon Souls or Returnal, these games that are like, oh god, nothing looks this good on PC. Now we're at a point where PC is outperforming console again, and I'm sure that will change. It's an ebb and a flow. That, you don't want to have all the time when you're gaming. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, that's a con. My final con, and this one is one that I don't think technology can fix, one that I don't think good marketing can fix, one that I don't think like a clever hardware solution is going to fix, and that is that there are always barriers in gaming. Right, even in a world that's going to fully adopt handhelds, it's going to like everyone's holding hands and they're in a circle and they're all singing "Kumbaya" and stuff like that, and everyone's getting along. There's no more console wars. We won. We all won. We're now one homogenous race. There are still going to be insurmountable obstacles in gaming and tech that aren't going away, and that is your PS Portal 2 isn't going to work on your Xbox, Series handheld dock, right? Your exclusive PlayStation games aren't going to be available on your PC handheld or on your Xbox handheld. You might go to a LAN party, you're all taking your handheld console because you've all got these handheld consoles now in this perfect world that I'm creating, and you go to beat up your, Helldivers 4. Oh no, it doesn't have crossplay for some reason. The Xbox version doesn't work with the PS version, so people are left out. You have to find another game to play. Um, or you might buy a PC handheld like the ROG Ally. It's got a proprietary adapter, and your previous stuff doesn't work. Or you bought the latest Steam Deck, and there are launchers that aren't compatible, or games that aren't compatible, or a version of Proton's not going to work, or you can't play Alan Wake 2 on it because it just doesn't work on Linux for some reason. There are always going to be things that make you go, "Oh, well, that sucks," or things you have to overlook, or what's the hole in the stairs theory, where like if you lived in a house with a hole in the stairs, you would eventually, over months and months and months, learn to avoid the stairs. But when a friend comes around and you have to go, "Oh, sorry about the hole in the stairs," and they say, "Well, why don't you just fix the hole in the stairs? Why do you put up with the hole in the stairs?" And that's sort of like something that will weigh on your mind of like, "Oh yeah, I've got this hole in the stairs. I have to get over, but ideally I wouldn't have to get over that." I think that's generally about like when you have like terrible problematic friends that you just go, you'll have to ignore. It applies in this format, right? Um, you're still going to have to buy multiple systems to enjoy the full range of games. You're still going to have your PlayStation handheld, your Xbox handheld, and your PC handheld to get it all. So it doesn't save you any money in that way. It doesn't create this perfect world where everything just plugs in and works together. It's not like Avatar where you can just like attach your hair to the creature's hair and then you're just bang, you're working. It's still going to have DRM and blockages and all sorts of things, and that's never going away. And I think that's sort of like the biggest con for me here of like this perfect world where you have your hybrid gaming system is you're going to have 3 hybrid gaming systems. You're going to have to keep them all charged. You're going to have to, maintain 3 different things if that's what you're doing, as opposed to right now, which is just 3 boxes that sit under your TV.
Yeah, I think ultimately, unless we get to a point where, the big 3 get priced out of making hardware, like where we hit a future where like video game consoles are just a absolute non-starter as a consumer product and nobody wants to buy one. Um, that's the only time that we'll ever get to a point where you can have one system that's a catch-all. And if we
Mhm.
ever get to that point, you bet your ass it's gonna be PC, right? Because that, PCs have applications beyond gaming. So, despite the fact that they have severely declined in popularity over the years as these alternative computing devices have come up, right? Between laptops and tablets and all these other things that you can use to access the internet or do your taxes or whatever, or word processing or whatever, right? That's all well and good, but there will always be a need for personal computers to some degree,
Mhm.
always, right? In the foreseeable future. So I think that's ultimately where I think we end up landing on this is that like, yeah, unless we get to a point where it's not financially viable for Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo to have their own devices, they will have their own devices. So yeah, I think even if we did go down this route, um, it would be advantageous for some gamers, and it would be, a price hike and potentially alienating for a lot of others. I will say, even after playing devil's advocate for the last hour here, I would certainly benefit from this system a lot. I would like this new future. I would sure love if PlayStation told us tomorrow that the PlayStation 5 Pro is a PlayStation Vita Switch style system that I can plug
Mhm.
into an eGPU. So, all my arguments be damned. I hope you're right.
Here we go. There we are. I just, if you ignore the pros and the cons and you just think about like what you want and what you want to get from gaming, I just think that
Just vibes alone,
eventually
it's a great idea.
vibes alone, everyone having a system they plug into a TV and it's boosted and it looks great, and you don't need to swap between things, or you don't need to choose where you buy your games because you buy them all in one place. What an ideal world. I do think PC gaming is
It is.
that right now, like in a way, but because I get to sort of use the Steam Deck to stream from my PC or play the games, or I do think there are versions of that that already work. But yeah, I want this to happen, and I'm glad we got to talk about it for a full hour.
It is funny, I'll leave on this because you brought up earlier how I brought an Xbox on a vacation with me, and I do think
Yeah.
it's funny that it's like, wouldn't it be so much better in this world where in your backpack, instead of your Nintendo Switch, your Steam Deck, and your Xbox, you had your Nintendo Switch, your Steam Deck, your handheld Xbox, and your handheld PlayStation?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so much I'm traveling so much lighter these days with my 5 handhelds that I have with me at all times, if you include my smartphone.
Plus all the docs, plus all
Yeah,
the
right?
docs.
I'm imagining myself with like one of those like bandos like Chewbacca, and it's just all my handheld devices are
Yeah.
just in there.
Oh, God of War? Yeah. Oh, God of War Ragnarok. Oh, you mean God of War Ragnarok 2? Sorry, let me yeah.
I got it on 2 devices, baby.
Yeah.
All right, gang. Well, if you want to write in and let us know what you think about Max's pitch for the future of handheld gaming, we want to hear from you. And guess what? There's a bunch of ways you can do that. Head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find all the places that you can get in contact with us, all the ways you can get involved in the community, and links to check out our sister shows, Nintendo Noise and the Flip Screen Games podcast. And again, if you're into handheld gaming, maybe we'll talk about that Nintendo stuff over there. Go check that one out if you haven't before. So, thank you guys again for joining us. Go over there, click on some stuff. We love you. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Max. Wish Steve some luck cleaning up that bird shit. We'll see you next week.